Who stole my clicker? Does Eric have it? Maybe I misplaced it. Do you have it back there? Interesting. There's a sign that said Eric is a loser, but that's not the same thing. I'll just have you guys. The other podium. Yes. All right. If this is any sign of what my week has been like, it's pretty good, scatterbrained. We're so grateful that for all the volunteers and all the work that everybody did this past week. It was absolutely incredible. We had the group from Tennessee, and I think it described this cycle very perfectly. Loving your neighbors, getting into the lives of your neighbors, talking with them. I love that as we were over at the Next Step Center, Belinda offered to roll up her sleeves, and I'm ready to work, and I'm going to be a workhorse. And then I look over, and she's like evangelizing the whole time. I absolutely loved it. It's so cool. And this is what it means to love our neighbors. We treat our neighbors the way that we would expect to be treated. This past week, everybody who volunteered, everybody who helped, they certainly lived this out. They went above and beyond, and it was absolutely incredible. In doing so, we lead people to God, and we do that through God's holy word, through the Bible. And as people learn who God is, they hopefully will learn to love God. It's the greatest commandment in all of the universe. And then we need to move each other to serving others. And this is what happened this past week. We had a week of serving other people. And I never once heard any complaints except from me. I complained about the heat. I'll confess, I don't like the heat. Eric was laughing at me. He's like, oh, this is nothing. I complained a little bit about the heat. But other than that, nobody complained. We literally just went out and everybody put their heads down and they worked and worked and worked. We had a group of, I think there were 26 teenagers who came, plus the 3 adults. So a really good-sized group. Our theme this year is the giving heart, a journey to radical love. And our theme verses come from 2 Corinthians 9, 7 through 8. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. I love these scriptures because I truly believe it. And today we're going to expand on this as we do each week. But this week we're talking about storing up treasures in places that matter. Storing up our treasures in heaven. Now, I firmly believe that we can do both. Now, hear me out for a minute. I'm not talking about laying up earthly treasures where we're greedy and we're like, look at the big boat that I bought and look at the big house. I was able to get rid of my house and buy a bigger house. That's not what I'm talking about. There is a responsibility, and this is laid out in scriptures, a responsibility to invest, to save, to put away, to be able to pass on inheritances. The Bible is very clear about taking care of your family. That does not mean that God bans all storing up earthly treasures as if we shouldn't have a savings account or retirement accounts or anything like that. So we have to put it in its proper context. But I want to give a good example in, there we go. This is a storehouse, what storehouses would have looked like in ancient Egypt. And of course, the story that we're going to talk about is Joseph. So if you know about Joseph, Joseph was, he was the favored son. And Joseph wore the coat of many colors. His brothers got jealous, and his brothers were originally going to kill him. And then they decided, well, that's not really a good idea. Maybe we shouldn't take it that far. We'll just tie him up and throw him into this cistern, and we'll kind of forget about him. All right, so they did that. But then they went a little bit further. They took his coat, they dipped it in goat's blood, and they brought it back to their father, and they said, my goodness, our brother Joseph, he must have gotten attacked by an animal, and he is no longer with us. In the meantime, Joseph was, as you know, he's sold into slavery into Egypt. And because Joseph had the gift of being able to interpret dreams, eventually he was able to become second in command, but not without a lot of trials along the way. Joseph, of course, was imprisoned, probably for a pretty good length of time. He was falsely accused of an escapade with Potiphar's wife, and it didn't happen, but he was imprisoned, and eventually he was brought out of prison because he had this gift of listening to God and interpreting dreams. Well, Pharaoh had a dream, and his dream was, the interpretation anyway, was that there were going to be 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of severe famine. So I want to read a little bit. This is not up on the screen. If you have your Bibles, you can turn to Genesis chapter 41. This is when Joseph is interpreting Pharaoh's dreams. But I want to talk specifically and read about his rise to power. He was talking about storing up the grain, and he said, look, Pharaoh, here's what we need to do. Now, I want you to hear how incredibly insane this idea sounds. Now, imagine that you're Pharaoh. You're the most powerful person probably on the planet. And all of a sudden, this prisoner is telling you, this slave prisoner is telling you, hey, there's going to be 7 years of famine followed by, or 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. And it's going to be severe. And here's the plan. Now, we got to take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. This is verse 35. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. The food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. Again, we're in Genesis 41, now in verse 37. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and as wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards to the throne will I be greater than you. He literally became second in command in all of Egypt. And then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand and clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot. This is essentially what would be the equivalent of our Air Force One. And he made him ride in the second chariot. And they called out before him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah. And he gave him in marriage to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. This is an incredible story. And if you know the story, the famine did in fact come. And years of famine went by. And all of the land, including far outside of Egypt, they were hungry, they were thirsty, they were desperate. There was a lot of death, a lot of destruction, and people were utterly desperate, and they threw themselves at the mercy of Egypt. Egypt became the beacon of hope for all of the world. It became how they were able to feed their families. That included Joseph's brothers, who came and they didn't recognize him. And you all know the story, and eventually Joseph reveals himself, and they all cry together, and he says, go tell our father and bring the whole family back to Egypt. And they do so. That's how the Israelites wound up in Egypt. I want to skip many chapters and go to Genesis 50, and I want you to hear this text. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him." Of course, that wasn't true, but that's what they were thinking. And so they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, 'Please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin because they did evil to you. And now, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father.'" Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Do you hear Joseph's heart? I love this passage because a lot of times we read the Old Testament like this big clunky book where it's like black and white and God's striking people dead, and you have Isaiah who touches the side of the ark and he falls over dead. Like, we read the Old Testament that way sometimes. But there's so much passion throughout the Old Testament, and God's heart begins to shine. And here, obviously, Joseph's heart really shines. Yeah, Joseph stored up, quote unquote, earthly treasures, but he did so with a purpose. He did so in obedience to God. He did so in response to a vision. He didn't do it for selfish gain. He did it literally to save lives. And you can hear where his heart is. When he heard his brothers say, "Hey, Dad said that you should forgive the brothers and not hold this against them," he began to weep. I think he wept because he was hurt that his father thought that he was capable of being cruel to his brothers. I think he was hurt by that. I think that Joseph knew his own heart, and the way that he responded was, "Don't fear." He told his brothers, "Don't fear, don't worry about it. What you did, you meant it for evil against me, but God meant it for good. God used this for his good purpose because I was faithful to him." Where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. And that leads us to this passage. Jesus said, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Wherever we're putting our treasure, that's where our heart is. If we're helping other people out, if we're giving to other people, if we're contributing to the needs of other people, that's where our heart is. If that's where we're putting our treasure, that's where our heart is. Our heart will be wherever we're storing up treasures. And then Jesus goes on, he says, "The eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." I used this expression, I think it was last week. Everything's blurring together at this point. But I used this expression that money is not meant to be served by us. But we can use money to serve us. We're not meant to serve money. We're not meant to chase after it. We're not meant to focus on all these earthly things because, as the expression goes, you can't take them to your grave, though some people do. If you ever heard of the people that bury their cars with them, or they're buried inside of their cars and things like that, I think it's a little bit overkill. It's a little bit silly. But we were not meant to serve money. That's not why it was put here. And so many people chase that. They chase after money. They chase after the bigger things, the better things. They're constantly chasing money. And Jesus is saying you can't serve both God and money, but you can let money serve you. That's the parable of the talents. You put it to work and you let it serve you. And I'll give you some examples of that. I truly think that we limit God sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, by limiting what we think God is able to do. Do you remember the verse? You remember our theme verse? Let me back up a second. There's a delay here. That latter part. God is able to bless you abundantly so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. I think sometimes we limit God and we're like, well, we can't really do that, or we can't afford to do this, or whatever it is. And I think there's a clear example of us kind of removing the limiting factors. The wells, I referenced the wells a lot, and the Magi boxes. We removed limitations on that. And we're like, let's just see what God does with that. I can't give a dollar amount yet, because I don't want to have people give up. But Christian, let me just say, if we were pushing the whole pink hair theme this year, I might be getting pink hair. We're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good on the well front. We have our Walk for Water coming up actually really quickly in 3 weeks or less. Our Walk for Water is coming up very quickly, and we already have a pretty significant amount that's pledged towards the well. We need to remove the limitations. We need to quit telling God what he can and cannot do, and we instead need to focus, put our heart where our treasure is. Start building treasure in other places. Instead of doing things for ourselves, say, God, we're going to bless other people. We did that this past week. We blessed other people. I thought it was really cool. The group went over to the Somerset County Mobile Food Bank, the warehouse. Lisa hooked us up with a contact over there, and they spent 2 hours over there. And he's like, I have enough work. Ben is the guy who runs it, and he says, I have enough work for the group. He's like, 20 is kind of the sweet spot. Anything over that, we have too many volunteers. He's like, but I can probably keep 20 people busy for 2 hours. I was like, cool, perfect. So they went over there, and within seconds, they were like a bunch of ravenous children, digging into boxes, putting them together, and they're lined up on the assembly line. I didn't stay around because I had to make a bunch of phone calls, but they came back, and I asked Matt Harden from Nashville, he led the group. I said, how did it go over there? And he's like, I think pretty good. Ben expected us to put together 2 full pallets. He said, we did 7. That's pretty impressive. By the way, yesterday was food distribution day for Somerset County. And I looked at the sign-up sheet because I get the emails, and they were really short volunteers this month, which is probably fairly typical. But they blessed people in the community, and they didn't limit their mindset. They came in and they said, we're here to serve, show us what to do, and let God do the rest. I loved that Ben said, on paper, we're not a Christian organization. He's like, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. He's like, but you will not find a single time where we don't stop and pray before we start the assembly line. He began our group with prayer. He said, at any given time, you can talk to any volunteer around here, open up a Bible, and you can go off to the side if you have a question about the Bible. We will open the Bible, and we will spend time, and we'll talk God. I love that. And when we take the limitations away, when we put our treasure in heavenly places, God does the rest. I don't know how, but God does his thing. On last Sunday, I asked if people would give enough food for dinner for the group. They got in at low after 6 p.m. I said, can you guys just provide a meal for them? There was so much food. Tracy, we joked that that you brought your food in on a wheelbarrow. There was so much food. It was absolutely incredible. There was plenty of food for them for the entire week. They didn't have to buy extra food. They were planning on buying groceries for the whole week. They didn't have to. And not only was the food available, but every single time that they showed up for lunch, everything was set up. All the food was put out by our volunteers. And everything was so seamless. So I love this. I love this passage. And this is not to like lecture people and tell you what to do. It's to say we're doing it. Keep putting your treasures in heavenly places and watch what God does with that. Don't ever limit God. Don't ever tell God what he can't do. Because I promise you, we're usually thinking like this, and God accomplishes this. Far bigger than what we can ever imagine. That's your message. I hope that encourages you today. If there's anybody this morning who has not yet taken the step to put Christ on in baptism, and you're ready, we have water that's ready for you. Or if you have prayer needs, we'd encourage you to come up. We're all going to stand and sing a song together. Please.